Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Inside Lowell Daily Pulse, the Tuesday, May 6th edition of the Daily Pulse. I'm your host, Teddy Panos, coming here from the Well Point Studios here in beautiful, historic, albeit rainy and somewhat chilly downtown Lowell. But we got a red-hot show for you today because sitting here in the Well Point Studios with me is my good friend, former Lowell Elections Director, and now one of the most in-demand political pundits in the city.
Oh, boy.
You're in demand, my friend. You know, Marty Laurie's dragging you on Saturday morning radio. Everybody wants you for their election coverage. You're gonna be back on Inside Lowell this fall, I hope.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But it's more fun to tell the stories about the State House in Washington. But
you're at your best on the state and national elections.
But Lowell was good. I learned, it was great. The 2 years, come home, it was fun.
Greg Pappas is our guest on the Daily Pulse today. He was the elections director of the City of Lowell for, what was it, 3 years before retiring?
Two. Little over two.
Little over two?
Yeah, I would have tried to stay longer, but I had that medical situation but we got a great replacement.
You did. Will Rosenberry, a colleague of yours at the Secretary of State's office, where you worked for over 3 decades. So,
27 years.
As I like to tell people, you have probably forgotten more about election law than many of these so-called experts think they know. And that's why I want to talk to you, because tonight on the Lowell City Council agenda, there's a lot of discussion, a lot of items. Will Rosenberry has responded to some things, requests for changes on polling locations, so on and so forth. They had an election subcommittee meeting last week that I watched as well. So there's a lot of interesting stuff in there. I talked about it a little bit yesterday with Marty Laurie, but I want to talk about the logistics of it with you and how it works. I also want to talk about what it is. You saw it come from the White House about a month or so ago, and maybe even telegraphed before that. But this notion of an election day versus what our national and state elections have become. I want to talk about that because I think not this year, but I believe in 2026, the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to come down with a very important ruling. So I want to get into all of that with you. And then I want to tease you a little bit about what your former party has become. The
Progressive Democratic Party?
Well, you weren't part of the Progressive Democratic Party.
Well, I was there trying to change it for the last, but I couldn't anymore. I just couldn't do it.
You were part of the Democratic Party when it was actually about democracy.
Yeah, when it was President Kennedy and stuff. But when it started changing the last 18 years or so, you got forced out. I mean, I didn't want to stay there and watch it go. I mean, when you start up putting people on the state committee that are not elected because they can't get elected, that should tell you something. And then you outvote the elected people, so.
Well, we're going to talk about all of that with Greg Pappas, and who knows where the conversation will take us. First, let me thank my Daily Pulse sponsors, Ray Booten, who is a licensed realtor in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. By now, you probably know he's also a certified appraiser in both of those states as well. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home, business, or commercial property, or if you want said property appraised, there's only one call to make, and that is to Ray Booten. You can find him online at realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. WellPoint is the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At WellPoint, your whole health is their whole point. Thanks to WellPoint, thanks to Ray. We got some other sponsors. You know the drill. We'll thank them in a little bit, but let's get right to it with our special guest, Greg Pappas. So tonight, Will Rosenberry, your successor, the new director of elections for the City of Lowell.
He was basically assistant director for state elections. And a Lowell guy.
That's right.
That's why we brought him. He's familiar with everybody. So Will's going to do he's doing a good job.
If you go to the City Council agenda online, you can see his informational report in the packet coming off the heels of the election subcommittee meeting. So there's a bunch of issues. And I want to kind of talk about some of the challenges, because as we were chatting off air, you said, they're having problems there. So one of the things is a lot of talk about the Morey School, which has been, I think it's been a voting location for as far back as I can remember. They need to make changes there. You said it's always been problematic. What were you aware of?
Well, the staff there, I could still see some of the faces of some of the guys and ladies. It was just saying how long a walk it was for people to get across the parkland and get into the building, into that, I mean, little things like that. They can make a lot. The handicap entrance is kind of tough, and I think Will looks at it. He'll come up with something. I didn't have time to do stuff like that. I was really trying to just straighten out what we hadn't done for the last 10, 20 years before I got there. And then I ended up with that surgery I had to have. But I think things like that can mean a lot to people and make it easier that way. That's an easy thing to do. But a lot of times it was mostly handicap at first and then something to do with the entrance. I remember the way it was set up. And they can move it around. Like if it was a rainy or stormy day, the water would come in. You know?
So those,
just a little thing, but they make a big difference. Yeah.
You did not watch that election commission meeting, nor have you read.
Oh no, I haven't. I just had more.
I should say the election subcommittee.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just getting over a hernia surgery now.
You're echoing exactly what Will and the counselors were talking about.
Well, there you go.
So their proposed solution is to keep it at the Maury School, I believe, but move it to a different location inside the school. Yeah,
yeah, that makes sense.
I believe where they vote in the cafeteria.
Yes,
or move it to the cafeteria. No, that was one of the things they wanted to talk about.
I'm trying to remember when you go in. Yeah, it's. I think it's the gym, but I think to move the cafeteria. Yeah, they'll figure it out. It'll make a difference.
Speaking of cafeterias, Lowell High School, we've learned that's become somewhat problematic because the new cafeteria, unlike the old cafeteria, apparently just doesn't have enough electrical
outlets. Wow.
So there was momentum, and especially if you watch the beginning of that meeting, Will talked about we're exploring alternate sites in downtown, so on and so forth.
Right.
By the end of the subcommittee meeting, they were talking about a different location within Lowell High School, perhaps the auditorium, a new auditorium or something that does have enough electrical
outlets are
power.
Important. Yeah.
So what's ideal? Keeping the same building, but maybe moving to a different location in the building, or getting a new location altogether from your perspective?
I would try to stay in the building because people are used to it, you know. I mean, even when we moved from the Bailey back to the Daily, people said to me, "It goes, we've been going to Daily for years. I don't know why we went to the Bailey," which I wasn't there for that, but we got to move it back. It wasn't. Parking was terrible, location. Yeah, I would try to stay there. I'm sure there's something of mine, but electrical outlets are real important, drastically important.
I would think so. So
it's kind of weird. New building, they don't have enough electrical in the cafeteria.
Don't ask me.
Wow, that's weird.
Don't get me going on that one. That's an entirely different podcast that I'm happy to bring you back. So as part of that conversation, we also were reminded that, part of the Acre district votes at Lowell High School. It's not just the downtown district, which kind of then jogged the memory that, you don't, by law, which I did not know, you don't have to locate a polling location within the district that it is voting, where the people vote in that district, because then they were talking about
if you can make it
changing
closer,
other locations.
Yeah, if you can make it closer for them, you can do that. Like sometimes, like the main polling place might be on one side of a river, but if you get a polling place for the other side of the river, it's that one precinct out of the ward. Yeah. Well, like I said, we'll figure that out. That's good stuff to do. Yeah.
Interesting.
You just got to deal with proper police, because the police are crucial. That's why we're very lucky. I've always had really great police officers. We're very lucky. We've got a bunch of good, I say it affectionately, young kids. They're really good, but police are crucial because they don't want to handle. I don't even care about the wardens that day. I'm more invested in police because they deal with the ballots and they take it very seriously. Lowell police are very good. Yeah.
Hold that thought, because I do want to get back to staffing and police officers, because that was also a discussion. Yeah. But one other discussed change was potentially the elimination of the charter school. It was brought up by Councilor Dakota, who serves on that subcommittee, that there just don't seem to be a lot of people going there. Is it better to just move everybody to the Daily school?
Is he saying just in the city elections, or for they don't go there for the state? Because I thought state they showed up pretty good. John would know better, maybe. I can't recall, but
that's I don't want to put words in
because you don't want to go back and forth. You can't.
I took it as just for the city election, but you're right. You also in the state election,
right? You got to think of both.
They were saying very low turnout at the charter school.
Okay, because you got to think of both, because you can't be going back over state here, federal. I mean, you don't want to do that. Will won't want to do that. But the sad thing is. Those guys were like the first one. We're ready. Like, I didn't even get to call the schools yet. Charter school was up. We're ready to go. We got the people. Here's the janitor. Here's the phone number. They were terrific. I'd be ashamed to lose those people. Too bad you couldn't put that staff somewhere else. They were just great.
Really?
best. The kids would tell you in the office they were the best. They were calling us before we called them. You know? Yeah.
Well, the Daily of the Upper Highlands, along with the Riley School, the two that see the most traffic, right?
Yes.
In the entire city.
The entire city, yeah.
Would adding voters there make sense given the high volume of traffic that they already have, especially as you say, forget the city election where we'll be lucky to get people to turn out, period. But state presidential elections, etc. These decisions spill over into those as well, right?
I think like I said, I think bring them Will, but sometimes you have to recognize is like Will and I know this stuff really well because we did it with Galvin. I mean, I did it longer, but sometimes you got to realize when you're talking to somebody or even a counselor, they go, oh, so you mean for the city election, have it here, and then the state election, you can't keep going back and forth. You can, but you don't want to do that because the public will get confused. You don't want confusion of where you go to vote,
And that ultimately started to come up in the discussion because, Councilor Scott made a point of, well, we want to, not change for the better, but if we're going to change, you want to make the change permanently. Right. So that, because if you do, as you said, you keep going back and forth, that's how people get confused. They start showing up at the wrong precinct. Yes, right. And then you start to get a frustrated voter. And Lord knows we don't have enough of them as is. Exactly. Let's not frustrate them.
Actually, Councilor Kim is very good. She's got a good perspective. She was always easy when to talk to on this. She really understood it very well. I will say that about her. She was very cognitive of all this stuff, but and she understood when we were talking about Belvedere and the Butler's, not the Boylston Street School, anesthesia.
The Pine Arts.
Yeah, she got So I should say that Kim was she was very helpful.
All right,
helpful with us. Yeah.
So the discussion started to wrap up at that election subcommittee meeting, and I wonder if it'll spill over a little bit into tonight about adding voting locations. Will talked about the more voting locations you have, the easier it is for people to access, which is desirable. He was asked about staffing. And he said, well, it's not going to affect your staffing. You simply pull, because you have to have the same team. So let me ask you this.
You might have to add an extra warden or clerk somewhere, but I get what he's saying.
So what is each polling? So each polling location, let's say it consists of what? Two precincts?
Well, some polling locations will have a whole ward.
A whole ward is how many precincts?
Four precincts.
So one building, 4 different voting locations.
Yeah, and then some of the wards are split. Right, exactly, yeah.
So what does that voting location need in terms of staffing? Because I'm thinking that now when I go to vote in Chelmsford, I vote at the McCarthy School, and like 8 different numbers that you have to, I finally remembered my number. But there's only one lady that sits at the front, or one table in the front where everybody checks in.
Wow.
And you say where
what ward, what precinct,
you live,
rather, what precinct,
and then they tell you where to go once you're inside.
Oh yeah, they do that in Draco, but you still got to go check in.
But each table with a number 6/1, 6/2, 8-1, 8-2. They all have how many people working at that table?
You need 2, one to check and one to do the machine.
Okay.
So you need 2. They call them inspectors, and you need a warden and a clerk.
Okay.
So you technically need 4. You should really have 6 because you need to give breaks and stuff like that,
And now I go, after I pick it up at the table where the 2 people are, I go and I vote in my little compartment, and now I go to the back where there's a voting machine. Does there have to be one voting machine for each?
See, in a state election, you have to have them for each, but in the city elections, we combine the wards because there's no precinct breakdowns.
Okay.
You can do precinct breakdowns, but you need more.
All right.
Yeah.
And there has to be somebody there.
Oh, yeah.
So one person at each voting machine, depending on how many voting machines you have. And then how many police officers do you need?
I usually have, and technically you have 1 per voting box, voting machine.
1 per voting machine.
Yeah.
So.
Because they're responsible, they're the ones responsible.
Now I'm going to start counting police officers when I go there.
Yeah.
But so the police officer is the one who has to take the voting machine back.
They take it out and they take it back.
Yes. So when Will Rosenberry talks about adding different locations, more locations, will not necessarily put a drain on the staff.
No, you're just moving.
Except for police. Because you have to now add a police officer.
Well, if you're going to take if you're going to take that precinct, you're going to take the police officer with it. The other one will stay with the other precinct.
But you're combining everybody into one voting machine. You said in the city election, right? Or
yeah, in the city election, you're all combined into one. But if you're going to break off, yeah, it's going to be interesting because I mean, you don't. I mean, you might have because we always unless they change it, and they want to go into reporting by precinct in the city, they can do that. But they'd have to have all 38 voting machines out there, you know.
I just want them to start reporting the early voting totals.
Yeah.
If they do that at 8:15, like they do, like they put up the ticker tape at all the polling locations, they stick it on the door, we can know the results pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, we did that with the machine in the office, the early voting. The people who voted, prior to, we put it up at 8 o'clock, like remember we did the last time?
So the machine at City Hall where all the early and mail-in voting ballots get run through?
Not necessarily.
Does that print a total?
Yeah, it prints a total.
Does it break it down by the same way?
Yeah, you could put that up on the wall.
So that's going to be a very long printout, right?
Well, it is.
33 different...
Right, but some clerks don't want to do it because they don't want to get people impression, the election's over, this is it. But when there's a whole bunch of stuff coming in.
In essence, you're getting 50+% of the vote.
Yeah, you get a pretty good idea, but some clerks don't want to post it, but you can. Okay. Will might not want to. I did. But that's up to the director.
Will, you would make my life and the election team here at InsideLowell's life much easier if you spit out that result.
And then it goes into the young lady. I always say young lady because it is a lady. Cindy comes from the company that we have, and she just, as the other ones come in, she puts it in, and it's in the machine ready to, all broken out already, and then the others just add into it, and then you get the total,
Okay.
Which is can be pretty quick too, depending. But
now, all of this entire discussion that the city council.
I'm going to say this too. You can also do them the Sunday before and before the Tuesday, but you can't make that public. You can't make it public. We don't even see that. You can't make it public till 8 p.m. on Tuesday night,
So you can tabulate it, but you don't print it out.
And we can't see it. Even if you tabulate it, we can't see the results in there.
Right. What if somebody hacks into your computer? Oh, no, that's impossible.
No, they can't.
I forgot.
It's impossible. It's not. It's on the counter,
All right.
But we don't even see it. So nobody knows what those results are of the early voting, we press that button at 8 o'clock.
So what's
turn a key.
Amazing to me is all the machinations we'll hear tonight and all the suggestions and going back to the subcommittee meeting and going back to the motion, the multiple council motions that led up to that subcommittee meeting and tonight and the multiple years and elections that have led up to this. All of it ostensibly is to make it easier to vote. So that more people become engaged, and more people come out and vote.
That's the concept of it. But we saw what that didn't pass,
And we're moving backwards. I almost feel like the more we complicate this, the more we try to make it easier for people to vote, the less and less that they want to vote. And it doesn't make sense. Logically, the easier it is to vote, you should have higher turnout.
Right.
But we're not seeing that.
No. I mean, we saw it in Drake when I was a kid. Like I said, you go back to the town elections, and they used to be in March, and you'd had, I remember the town had like 13,000 people, like 11,000 registered voters. Like everybody was registered. 9,000, 8,500, 9,000 would vote in the town primary, town election, not the state, for selectmen and all the, of course there were a lot more offices and everybody was elected, planning board, everything. But still, they decided one year, wow, if this is this good in March when we can have snowstorms, let's move it to May. The year they moved it to May, it dropped like 30%, then it went down 50%. It's like as if in the winter nobody had anything to do, so they go, let's just go vote. There's something to do. They should have left it in the winter.
They're locked in the house.
You make it, you make it easier, and we got other things to do,
No, listen, in my case,
it worked backwards.
Now, Chelmsford, I think, still does weekdays, Tuesdays, but I get to the weekend now in May and late April, and I'm running around. I had a soccer set this past Saturday. I had a soccer game at one field. My wife had to take the son to a baseball game at another field. Then we had to get to Sudbury for a basketball tournament. And you're right. In the springtime, maybe there's something to this.
There is
the winter doldrums.
I don't know. It could be that. I mean, even in Drake, they moved it to Saturday. They had early voting the week before for 4 days. I mean, and for the early voting, they had 847 people voted early, right? But when then you had a Saturday, right? You actually had more people vote early than what was the election?
So you had about half, 50%
vote.
So it was about 45% voted early, and then but total 1,800 something people.
Think about that.
Voted.
Out of 20, what the hell, 25,000 registered voters?
Over 25,000. So it was a 7.25% turnout. I did the calculations.
Right.
So this talk about, well, weekday people are working. It's like, well, that's a Saturday election.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Lowell, by the way, Lowell, compared to the surrounding towns, Chelmsford, Drake, whatever, Lowell does pretty well. As embarrassing as the turnout was in 2023, Lowell does pretty well.
Right.
I don't know. I just feel like we're just chasing our tail.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately all it's doing is, I think it's adding to the confusion. I think it's costing the taxpayers a lot more money to host an election than it used to.
Oh, it does.
And it's not like more people are participating.
But years ago, I remember when I was a kid in the State House, all the reps and senators, always a low turnout statewide, then people are happy. That's what they used to think.
Incumbents love a low turnout,
but they used to think, well, they're happy with what we're doing, so they didn't come out to vote. They usually come out to vote when they're mad, which is true to a degree, but this is really low.
Well, when you have, I've always thought challengers drive elections. If you have a compelling challenger or a compelling issue, people will come to the polls. And incumbents, for better or worse, you're right, they have an advantage the lower the turnout, but they stopped exciting people, I think, and well, maybe other than Donald Trump, but incumbents stop exciting people after they win their first election, when they excited them.
Well, they're the most vulnerable, usually, especially in Congress in the state, the most vulnerable running for the second term. That was the time that you either made it or you lost.
Strangle them in the crib, as the theory went.
But the thing that's interesting is they used to look at it that way, but I lost my train of thought on that. But just like you said, when I was working for state treasurer and we were up for election, or even Billy when Galvin was up for re-election, or even Atkins when I worked in Congress, you would look for the state rep fights. Wherever there was a state rep fight, it was going to be a 20 to 25% bigger turnout in that area than it would be the next district over. If it was a state senate fight, it'd be about 10 to 15% bigger. If it was a state rep and senate fight, you'd have about 30% bigger turnout in the primary. So you focus it, just like in the city of Lowell. I mean, if I'm a counselor at large, and I don't have any, I have opposition, and there's a council race in the Centerville, and there's a council race in Belvedere, so I'm going to spend my time over there knocking doors, because it's going to be a much bigger turnout there than it's going to be.
So you're telling the Lowell City Council candidates to get to Belvedere, to get to the Upper Highland,
well, I'm just taking
to get to the Acre.
If they have if there's a race, Well,
that's the only places we know of. With
right now.
Races right now.
Right now, but like I said, there's no races until people actually turn their papers in. There's no preliminary until they turn the papers in. I don't tell anybody, nope, we don't know if we're going to be preliminary until they actually turn their papers in.
That's true. We're assuming there will be, because of the number of candidates who are out there. I think it's safe to say in Belvedere there will be, and more than likely.
But see, newer people running and newer people in this stuff, and they don't understand that stuff. It's what's normal for people who've been around it forever. Just like if, I went to yesterday to the doctor to have my hernia incision looked like and stuff like that. It's half the stuff I don't know what he was talking about. But you know what I'm saying? It's just stuff we grew up with, so we knew, it's part of government,
We're chatting with Greg Pappas, our doctor of elections here in the City of Lowell. He's our election expert on InsideLowell.com, and we'll continue our conversation looking at state and national election day, which, mark my words, as we sit here on Tuesday, May 6th, 2025, I don't think you'll hear too much about it throughout the rest of this year. But I believe in 2026, around this time, everyone will be focused on the United States Supreme Court and a decision that I think they're going to be forced to make on the term Election Day. We'll talk about that in a quick second. Let me just thank our Daily Pulse sponsors one more time. Ray Booten, licensed realtor, Massachusetts and New Hampshire, certified appraiser. Both states as well. You can find them online at realestaterayBooten.com. Thank you as well to our friends at WellPoint. They're always giving me good swag here too. I love it. WellPoint, little Yeti over here, keeping my water nice and cold. WellPoint, their whole point, or your whole health is their whole point. Easy for you to say. Thanks as well to Washington Savings Bank, banking that goes the extra mile. Make the switch now to Washington Savings Bank. TMI Properties, quality and value at every price point. Find your perfect space with TMI. By the way, today is TMI Tuesday, so go to our Facebook page and check out the Suites in the Air Mansion. Awesome place if you're looking for a home, if you're looking to make Lowell your home. That's the place. Mahoney Oil, providing warmth and protection in Greater Lowell and southern New Hampshire since 1925. I bet you some folks need a little warmth and protection these last couple of nights. got chili in the Panos household. Thank you as well to the Greater Lowell Community Foundation, improving the quality of life in Greater Lowell through strategic, impactful philanthropy. Francis E. Preventure Insurance, the agency Greater Lowell has counted on since 1982 to protect its most valued assets, and by the Massachusetts Pirates, who are bringing all the hard-hitting action and excitement of arena football to the Mill City. Later on today, we're going to talk to the Massachusetts Pirates' new head coach. We'll introduce you to him and see which direction he's taking the team in through the rest of the 2025 season. But right now, we turn our attention back to our guest today, former Lowell Elections Director, Greg Pappas. All right, so Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, but a couple of weeks ago, put something out again. He had been talking about it a little bit during the campaign, very early after his inauguration. He talked about it, but he started to say it one more time, as if to keep reminding people that Election Day needs to be Election Day. Right. So since Election Day, where everybody in the country at probably much higher percentages used to turn out and vote for whether it was the president, United States Senate or Congress, or even in your state, your gubernatorial and state races, there was just one day where people showed up to vote. They made an allowance for overseas military people or people stationed. Also, if you're stationed in another state, right?
Diplomatic, embassies and stuff, but not people that moved overseas. No.
All right. What about there were also for people if you were vacationing or if you perhaps faced some type of disability, weren't you able to go request a mail-in ballot?
Oh yeah.
When did that happen?
Oh, that's many. I mean,
has that been since the beginning of?
Yeah, absentee balloting.
Absentee ballot.
But that's got nothing to do with the timeline. You know? The only one the timeline was for the 10-day thing by federal law and state law. The only ones ballots that can be counted are military overseas and diplomats. Even people that live overseas, expats, so you can't count those. They're going to be in by 8 o'clock at night.
So when you say 10 days, you're talking about the fact that, and I remember there was some very close elections. I remember the Bush-Gore 2000 election. They talked about overseas military ballots and how they might affect Florida because they were down to literally a couple of hundred votes deciding the presidency. So if you are overseas military, your ballot had 10 days to arrive from the end of it.
Right, and they usually just the president. That's it. Their ballot's not to hold down the line. It's just the presidential ballot. Okay.
Now, COVID comes around. Well, prior to COVID, we start to get early voting. I think in Lowell, it was introduced in 2016. I believe the Trump-Clinton election was the first one that you could early vote in Lowell. I remember going to the mayor's reception room and voting. Early voting. There are laws that... So states, did the federal government pass something about early voting, or was that the individual states?
I think it's individual states. I don't remember the feds doing it because
that would require a legislation from Congress and approval from the president
and regulations. Yeah, because I mean, the reality is like for instance, even like somebody was asking why is Drake at election only from 8 o'clock till 4 o'clock in the afternoon and not regularly 7 to.
I was asking that.
Yeah, there's rules and regulations that Galvin put together regarding all the early voting and the poll openings. So if a city or town was going to do them, depending on population, it would tell you how long your hours had to be. You take a small town out west, they didn't have to have it at all. They didn't have to have early voting.
So, and in municipal elections, you do not have to have. That's a choice that people make to allow early voting and or mail-in voting?
Yeah, but you got to pay extra for it. Like I said to the manager, I said, we can have it, but you got to pay extra for it.
Okay.
It's going to cost a lot of money.
All right. So now we fast forward to 2020, COVID, all hell breaks loose, and the massive expansion of what used to be allowed for military members and the rare disabled vacationing people who would do a mail-in ballot.
No disabled. They could do mail-in, but they still had to be by 8 o'clock.
Right. So,
but the military were not 10 days.
Right. But we start allowing mail-in ballots to a tremendous degree.
Oh yeah.
State by state.
Yeah.
Okay. But there was no federal, to my recollection, there was no federal law, or was there?
Well, the thing is,
because of the Emergency Act?
You have to look into it, but the point is all that stuff was over once they declared the emergency gone. But if they did, the point is the federal election was always one day.
Right.
I mean, back 30 years ago in the legislature, there were, back after I worked for Nick and I was working in Crane's office in the 80s, every once in a while there'd be a representative file a bill to make election day a holiday.
Yes.
There was a reason for that because there's only one day. They knew the federal government, there's only one day. State elections are not state elections. Every state election has a U.S. Congress member on it. That makes it a federal election. And then if you go to municipal...
So which law, so let's say there's a conflict between the federal law and the Massachusetts law.
Feds when?
The feds oversee.
Yeah, always.
Can you make a provision whereby, let's say in 2026, Congresswoman Trahan will be on the ballot?
Yeah.
So that's a federal election, but we're really voting for governor. Can Massachusetts tabulate votes during different periods for every race except the congressional race?
No, because the reality, that's why I say if you think it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and, you know, I remember when I was going to, I was talking to Senator Panchataxis the other day. We were talking about how when he went to Suffolk Law, the professor he had for con law, I had an undergraduate school. Because Suffolk back then, if you were going to be a government major, not a political science major, and some of my friends, he knew them because they became chief of staffs to governors, they were Senate presidents, the close friends of mine I went to school with that's worked with me in the sales. Always was a federal election when you have a federal person on the ballot. And technically, even Dr. Callahan told us, which he's right, even municipal elections are technically federal because all elections come from the Constitution. The United States Constitution sets the rules for all elections. 18 years of age to vote is the constitutional thing to vote. These states that are dropping them to 16 years old and 15 years old, they can do it, but until it goes to the Supreme Court. I think it goes to the Supreme Court, they're going to try and say, no, it's 18, it's a federal election. That's it.
So this is where it
states
gets
don't make election law.
And this is the conversation, because now you've got some states, by the way, Massachusetts is not one of them. In Massachusetts, your ballot must arrive by 8 p.m. on the first Tuesday in November to be counted.
Correct.
Unless you're overseas military.
Overseas military or work in an embassy.
So we, despite the fact that Massachusetts is as liberal, democratic a state as
but
California, New
that's
York,
federal law everywhere.
They shut it down.
All the states are supposed to be that way.
They're supposed to be, but there are states that will have
good luck.
And we saw this play out in the Pennsylvania Senate race. You
Not
saw
supposed
it in
to.
California and Oregon and Washington national. You saw it in Nevada and Arizona. Some places will count mail-in ballots that arrive late. And what President Trump is now saying is, no. That is against the law, and we're not going to do it.
Whether you like him or not, he's right. I mean, that's the constitutional law I learned, and I don't suspect any judge on the Supreme Court is going to disagree with that.
So let me ask you a question. This is you suspect that they're not going to, the judges won't disagree. Yeah. Well, why hasn't it been challenged? We've had a 2020 election where ballots were clearly arriving well after election day. We had 2022 midterms. We had a 2024 election. And it's still going on. Why hasn't this been challenged? Well, who has to challenge it?
Let me put it to you this way.
Is it the Attorney General who has to challenge it?
When I was a kid growing up in Drake, everybody had guns. You grew up with guns. Drake was known for that. Drake had sent more people to the Revolutionary War per population than all the colonies.
Do you know, I used to go, one of the areas my buddies and I used to go ride our bicycle was what we called the gun range out in Drake. We used to go collect spent bullet shells.
We never had crime problems. You try to do something, a woman pull out up one, pointed at you, you ran. I mean, it's just the way it was. So I'm bringing that up for a reason because I belonged to the NRA when I was in high school, and then I got out of it. You know why I got out of it? As I said because I wrote a letter to them one time saying, I think it was my first year in college, why don't you guys just challenge it before the Supreme Court? What do you mean? The shortest amendment in the world, basically the population is the militia, and no law shall be made to infringe upon this law. So if you take it to the Supreme Court, they're going to look at it and say, yep, all state laws are illegal. Why didn't they go do it? Because there's reasons they don't go do the stuff. Obviously, people are benefiting by it that are making money, whether it's lawyers. I don't know what it is. But I don't get it.
But the Supreme Court has made some rulings that have upheld certain state laws that do kind of infringe on gun rights.
No, they don't. Look at New York. They get the crap kicked out of them. Every time they go to the Supreme Court goes, no, they have to be able to carry. That's why you get somebody...
Didn't they rule in favor of Illinois for one recently?
No, not that the one I saw. No, I didn't see it, no. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. I mean, they're telling everybody, look, it's right there, one line, boom. So I think the same thing happens with this. I was saying the same thing years ago. I mean, there was no question in the legislature back then. Everybody knew it was a federal election. Every election was. It's election day in November. Let's make it a holiday. The reason they were saying let's make it a holiday was because they knew they could at least do that, but they couldn't extend it or anything else. All this extension is stuff you get away with for so many years till the court comes in and actually does their job. They don't do anything without, So you go back to Andrew Jackson, and that's where the Supreme Court started getting active during that time period in the 1880s, and a lot of if you look at him, in the early 1880s, the district courts and all of them got very active, started pressing him, and he basically said to me, he goes, "Good luck to you." He says, "I'm the commander of the army." He says, "Come down and try to make," because he got frustrated, try to make me change things, because he was getting rid of a $60 million deficit. He did it in 8 years, which was huge in those days. And the way he was doing it, they didn't like it. Who didn't like it? The bankers. So the judges were coming up with this phony crap like they're doing today. Judges have no say in what presidents can do. They have none at all.
So you believe that if the Trump administration would probably going to have to be through the Attorney General, Bondi, or whoever's Attorney General.
It could be Judicial Watch. It could be you and me if we had the money. Yeah.
Oh, so you're saying a private organization?
Anybody should.
A private entity can file a challenge in federal court?
I'm in California. They're counting my ballots don't count because they come in legally, and then they count all these other ones illegally after. I don't. Yeah, I want to file a thing. It's $20,000 to file. I think in the Supreme Court. If I remember, it was 20,000 years ago. I don't know what it is now. But.
So what's shocking to me is this hasn't happened yet. Because as you say, the law is pretty.
Because they like to work it through the judicial system. Because I hate to say it, good friends of mine are lawyers. The attorneys like to make money.
Because each party wants there's certain things they like and dislike about it, so they want to they want to manipulate what they want to do. That's what works to their advantage while shutting out what the others.
Right, and the public. That's why the public wants nothing to do with parties anymore. They're finally aware George Washington was from the beginning. There should be no parties.
Perfect segue.
Yeah,
because I want.
George Washington was against the party system. This is ridiculous.
And
actually, in most states, before you say that, most states, the parties in the United States, if you're in most states, they say, "Okay, you want to have a primary, you pay for it." We spend what, $15-20 million. Let the Democrat and Republican Party pay for it in Massachusetts. You know what we'll have?
I agree.
We'll have caucuses, just like Iowa does.
I agree. So what? So that's the main difference between the caucus and the primary. The caucus is paid for by the respective political party,
and it's a lot cheaper, right? You have an announcement. It's like a town committee meeting. You know, you have a town committee meeting or whatever, a district-wide congressional reader. You put mailings out, and you say we're going to vote on candidates that are going to be nominees to the Democratic Party for, state rep, state senator, Congress, and all that. Come to the meeting. If you don't want to go, you don't have to go. Your choice. The choice will be on the ballot. That's what caucuses are, and they're a lot cheaper to run because the parties in like Iowa would say no, we'd rather just do a primary. It's expensive as hell. Yeah. Caucuses cost nothing.
There are also states that do caucuses and primaries, which I find fascinating.
Well, they might nominate
in the presidential races.
Well, presidential is different. They don't do caucuses, but they do. The presidential is that funky one thing that happens every 4 years in January. It's each state does their own thing. Yeah, you're correct about that. That's a little bit different, but it's just the presidential. It's not all the offices. Right. It's not all the offices. It's just one office.
All right. So you joined the growing chorus of people that have abandoned a party. In your case, the Democratic Party, of which you were a card-carrying member for how long?
God, I was when I started when I was 18. I mean, I just looked at it this way. It's not that I abandoned it. They
abandoned you.
I mean, God. I mean, you go to the state committee meeting. I don't even know who these people are. They were adding people on that, and there's no way my friends I love all my friends, but there's no way they agreed with these people. I mean, when you start talking to people at state committee meetings and stuff like that about social issues and sexual issues and gender issues, that just tells me that they're not smart enough to understand the real issues that are important. Anybody can talk ragtime on stuff like that. That's easy, but talk about stuff like how do you fund a program that's they don't know what
So when did you make the switch? When did you flip over to unenrolled?
Actually, it's when I came back to Lowell. So I wanted to be
2022.
Yeah, I wanted to be. I didn't want to work as the director in Lowell and have anybody say, "Well, you're really this." I mean, people figured I was, but I was a President Kennedy Democrat, so I was long out of the way,
And
I got attacked for that.
You worked for Democrats like Bill Galvin, Chet Atkins when he was in the United States Congress,
Bob Crane, Nick
Lambros out in Reagan, a bunch of folks.
So, for 47 years.
So you kind of answered the question of which I want to ask was, what the heck has happened to your party, and why do they refuse to learn from history, especially recent history? I'm watching. Right. I'm watching all the different tactics they're taking. The modern, the 2025 resistance as opposed to the 2017 resistance. But it's all the same. But when you're like the latest martyrs are PBS and NPR.
Right.
We've pushed gangbanging, wife-beating human traffickers out now because apparently we've now discovered some audio tapes and some written affidavits about the Maryland man.
Well, they knew the poor woman called the cops on him several times. Said, "I don't want him to come back. What are you doing?" I mean, come on.
Yeah, we also now have video of the arrest in Nashville where you had a bunch of people who was allegedly human trafficking.
Well, the thing that I mean, but you go back years ago, like not too many years ago, but I mean, even the guys and the ladies that were in the legislature with me, I mean, you know, even up until like say 15 years ago or whatever, it changed a lot after Stevie left, Tommy left, Kevin left, Johnny Cox left. But your rational thing, I mean, there was no way somebody would get up in the United States Congress like Schumer did the other day and start screaming that, oh, Trump's numbers are down to 40. Well, it's Mr. Senate Minority Leader. You know that's the same polling companies, the two of them you're using, the same ones the public knows that had her winning. But if you look at Trafalgar and if you look at Rasmussen, he's at 50. Right. And then the next day, CNN bumped him back to 53. But here's the reason I say that. Because he's turning and they said, oh, by the way, so if you think you're going to win now because he's down at 40, well, your personal polls
at 17.
You're
right?
at 17.
Well,
hello.
Thank you for pointing that out.
You know, they would never do that when I was a kid. They go, we don't want to look like a fool, but let yourself look like a fool. You didn't let people catch you.
Well, because they think people are stupid.
Well,
let's be quite honest. When Chuck Schumer, and not just Chuck Schumer, and unfortunately, I'm watching our own Congresswoman do it every day on social media. I'm watching Ed Markey just outright lying to people. They're lying to you again. Right. And then they give you these, and just so you know that they're lying to you, when they tell you that Trump's popularity is plummeting, they're quoting the ABC News poll, which Greg and I knew on an election day that
not even close,
that Donald Trump was going to win. Yeah. You were shocked that he won because you keep believing the same polls that are intentionally deceiving you. But put that aside for a second, though.
You can't do a poll that has 5,000 Democrats and 2,000 Republicans, expect people. But anyways, but I mean, I was just looking at something the other day, again, a congressperson from the area in Massachusetts having their district hours and different. But you go online, a friend of mine says, "Are you going to go to this?" I says, "No, I'm going to be on something. I got something going on." He says, "Why do I have to sign up for it?" I guess because they want to know who's coming. When I was a kid, you didn't do that. And you didn't have to sign up or call the office ahead of time, tell me. We were trying to get people to come because we knew the guys and the ladies we work for were really good at the job. We want more people to meet them and ask them questions so they could answer them back. Now they want to know who's coming ahead of time. Oh, really?
Well, at some point, I'm afraid they're going to have to start giving IQ tests to get there. And if you score too high, they're going to exclude you.
I don't get it.
The latest whopper that they're now working on, and they're everything, and don't take my word for it, just go to their Facebook page. Just go to the Facebook page of any elected Democrat official. The message is the same, that Donald Trump is doing X, Y, Z. He's cutting funding for X, Y, Z, NPR, PBS, poor Americans, seniors, veterans, pick a subject, any subject, in order to give tax breaks to billionaires.
Yeah, really?
That's the line.
Yeah.
Folks, just look it up. Again, don't take my word for it. Donald Trump's tax package that he has proposed calls for eliminating the income tax on people making less than $200,000
you know what that
a year.
Means?
People making less than $200,000 a year, no income tax. People above, which includes billionaires, will pay an income tax. Not just that, but the president has also proposed no tax on tips. No tax on Social Security. You know how the elderly are getting cut? Well, he's telling you, no taxes on any.
Well, think about it. Some kid coming out of college, you come out of ULowell, like my nephew did out of the civil engineering. He started some job, 90 grand about 5 years ago. Great program. I told Kyle the other night, I says, you're over 100. You know you're going to be taking home an extra $17,000 a year.
Nothing.
You're going to be taking home basically $1,600 more a month. That's incredible. That's never happened before. But I don't get it. You know, it's just like, it's work with it, because this is what we should have done.
So that's what I'm wondering. What is with your part? Why can't? You know what a good argument against that Trump tax plan is? You're going to explode the deficit even more.
Yeah.
Focus on the $4+ trillion debt, whatever it's at now. Maybe it's $6 trillion. I don't know what the hell it is now. Focus on that and use that. No, they're not even pointing.
Well, you look at this Treasury Secretary, and you can see what they're doing. And these companies, what was another company, $4 billion today? You know, it's it's not going to, the deficit's going to go down. I mean, let me put it to this way. Here's another thing.
It should. When it does, it's going to be very interesting to see what the counter to it will be, or if they'll, I can guarantee you PBS and NPR won't report it, just like they stopped reporting on egg prices and gas prices all of a sudden.
Well, that's another thing. Saturday, I went to eat with my wife, and my cousin called me up in Haverhill. We met him and his girlfriend, and I down 113 in Drake. I stopped and got some gas. It was what was it? $2.99. I think it was $2.99 a gallon. I was coming back from the doctor's yesterday. 3 days later, $2.79 a gallon. 20-cent drop in 5 days.
Yeah, I saw
the one here in Lowell,
$2.72, I believe, in West Bridgewater.
Over here is 40 cents cheaper than it was at the beginning of the year. Are you kidding me? That's major. I don't care who's doing it. I don't care if it's a Democrat. That's what you got to do.
Well, again, these are the things that help poor people.
Well, this is why the public. Well, this is why more and more people. Like I said, the party's getting smaller and smaller. I told you. I mean, between 2020 and 2025, like 250,000 people in Massachusetts unenrolled from the Democratic Party. 250,000. That's Lowell, Drake. That's like huge.
Back that up again. Please repeat those numbers.
Yeah, from 2020, there were what? 1.5 million Democrats in
Massachusetts. Registered Democrats.
Yeah, and now there's 1.2, so that's like a 300,000, 20-something thousand difference.
Where are these 200-something thousand people going?
Are they going mostly to the Republican Party or unenrolled? Some, but mostly to unenrolled because the public doesn't want to deal with the party crap anymore. And I don't blame them.
I don't either.
I don't like dealing with the party stuff, I mean, and even years ago when I was working for Nick, there was Democrats and Republicans. So it was a little bit more even, but there were 10 issues a year that they disagreed on, maybe 8. And you know what would happen? They just vote and they go have a beer. Or sometime I remember Senator Tully, Bobby Buell couldn't make it, and a senator from Gloucester. Joe, they used to have pairing. I'm not going to be in today. Can you, he's a Republican. Can you vote? Can we pair? Basically, it cancels Joe's thing. I'll go, sure, Bobby, no problem. You do it for me sometime. So he would say, I'm pairing with Senator, yes, Senator Buell's no. You knew he was, but you did it anyways out of gentleman-lady relationships, He just did that. So it's only 10 issues, but they weren't 10 issues about transgenderism or sexual this. There were issues on housing things or budget on this, but it wasn't nothing to do with the sexual crap. I mean, it's like psychological craziness. I mean,
the figures you cited were from 2020 through 2024, right? Do we know in 2025 is that trend continuing?
This is 2025.
Well, you've gone through right now, but most of that change could have happened between 2020 and 2024.
Oh, yeah.
And very likely between 2022 and 2024.
But I just pulled these up.
The president was senile and nobody was running the country.
And everybody knew he had 2 brain aneurysms that was in the public. But anyway.
When will we know? So I learned from Will Rosenberg the other day that the census forms have been sent out and whatnot. Yeah. When will we know if that trend is continuing from January 1st, 2025 through today?
I'm not sure.
Because I'm curious if despite all these efforts to organize another resistance to the Trump administration, if that trend is continuing. That is not a good sign if you're a Democrat. And I implore the Democrats that I like to pay attention.
Yeah, I take this off of Galvin's website. Because we had a great website, we still do. So I take it off. I mean, I think he posted every New Year or something like that.
Every New Year. Okay.
Yeah, he might do it again.
Seen the 2025.
Well, no, but these are for 2025. This is for the years of 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25 at the beginning of the year.
Can you narrow it down to the 1 year only on the search?
Oh, yeah. You can go back to Billy's got like 1914.
And just look at one individual year to see.
Yeah, all the way up. And what town, community, too.
Can the public access that?
Oh, it's right on his website. We have
Secretary of State's
website. He did a great website, yeah.
Voting registration
was part
by
of that.
Party, by year.
Oh, yeah.
And then you can do long-term threats.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, why didn't I know about this tool?
Yeah, it's all on
show me how to do this
election division. You go to election division, you go down the bottom, it says research.
Okay.
Put in the year, put in the year, put in the party, put in the. You can even look at the elections. Put in the candidate, Bobby Kennedy, when he was a state representative, Paul Sheehy, guys like that. You can see what they. Did a great job with this stuff.
It's all archived. Oh,
he doesn't know anything about computers, but he sure knows how to direct people.
Galvin, a good leader delegates properly.
Right. He did a great job on it. Yeah.
All right.
It's one of the best in the country. I tell you.
See, now you gave me a new tool. I could be even more obnoxious thanks to Greg.
There you go. Yeah, that's all there for the public. Yeah.
All right. A lot of good election talk and some Trump derangement talk from your former party.
I just, like I said, I don't care. I was always, you just do the right thing for the people and the right thing for the public. And the truth is the truth. You deal with the truth is the truth. That's it. If you don't want to deal with the truth, then you're only going to hurt yourself. You're just not going to do too well in life. I mean, if you want to go down a false road, it's going to cause all kinds of problems for you. Yeah,
I don't know if the sting of election night would have been any easier for people to take had they paid attention to people like you and I who knew what was going to happen.
Well, they get involved with personalities instead of the reality of, you just look at what's best for you and your area and stuff. I mean, let's face it, getting rid of the federal income tax, that's like you said, kids coming out of school are going to probably average like 45 grand, 50 cents. That's $7,000 more in their pocket. That's going to make a big difference.
Yeah, I don't know too many billionaires who make less than $200,000 a year and get an income tax cut.
But that's going to help a lot of the average person, I mean, your wife will probably get. You don't make enough at the Athenian. We know that. Thea makes more than you, but that's
she works more than me.
Of course she does. Good thing you said that. She's your sister.
She does. I'll admit it.
Yeah.
Greg Pappas, former Lowell Elections Director. Thanks for joining us. Glad to have you back in the saddle.
I feel better.
In a couple of weeks, and again, as we get closer to Election Day, we'll talk more and more with you.
But I really
don't let Marty Laurie steal you. By the way,
no, Marty's a good guy. I love Marty, but I just think I have a lot of. I know. I just telling you, Will Rosenberry's a sharp kid. Let him do his thing, and they're going to do well by him. I'm glad we got a Lowell guy who's basically the assistant director of state elections. He came in. I mean, the kid's good.
We've been after.
Yeah.
Seriously, after a long time of having people from the solicitor's office running elections, we've had you and Will back to back.
I mean, they didn't know election law, even if they're lawyers. I mean, but Will knows it, and he'll do well for us. I mean, he's got a good team now. We have good kids. Okay, I'll let you.
Greg Pappas, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well on the Daily Pulse this Tuesday, May 6th. We'll be watching that city council meeting tonight for the election talk. We'll be watching the city council meeting for perhaps the beginning of the battle. There's a collision course. The City of Lowell and its school department are on a collision course over budget numbers. There's a story on InsideLowell.com right now. Check it out. It kind of lays out what's happening, not in too much detail. Folks are still being a little hesitant to talk publicly, but the documents are there, and the city and the schools are about $4 million apart in what the schools think the city should give them versus what the city is saying they're going to give the schools. The politicking has already begun behind the scenes. We'll talk more about that tomorrow with former Lowell Mayor Bill Samaras, who, by the way, his prior hat to becoming a politician and a mayor was head of school at Lowell High School. So he's got a unique perspective. Mayor, city council member, also within the school department. So we'll talk to him about that and everything else. We'll have some fun on Friday with the Pod Squad, Batch, and the Hyphen. I don't know what I'm going to torture you with yet on Thursday, but I promise you I will find something. So till then, everybody, stay safe out there today. Stay warm out there today. And until I catch you on Wednesday, see you on the other side.